today's question and answer session on our research and development meeting for Create Age. Before we kick off the meeting in this entirety, I'd like to invite Jo, one of our directors, to open with a karakia.
Nice to see all of you here in person and sorry, those online after here. Yes, so it's going to be hopefully a good morning of learning and collaboration. So we'll just start with a karakia. Me inai tātou. Whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga, ki mā kina kina ki uta, ki mā tautau ki tai. E hi a ki ana te atāpura, ke te o he hauhu, tihei maurika.
Kia ora, Jo. Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Sisbury Tauranga, ko Aaron Te Awa, ko Kerridge Te Whānau, no Worthing England ahau, ko Vanessa Burhol o Ness, tako ingawa, hei aharangi kaitiaki ko Mātua ahau, no rera tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou. So I'm Ness, I'm one of the co-directors of the Centre for Co-Created Ageing Research, and it's good to see so many people here in the room today, eager to learn about our first call for research development groups for the Centre for Co-Created Ageing Research, and welcome to everyone that's online as well. Today, really, what I want to do is outline the purpose of our research development groups, which I shall refer to as RDGs, just to, because I'm used to saying that. I want to talk about involving people in co-creation in the RDGs, the priorities for our RDGs, what we expect the membership to comprise, expected outputs and outcomes from the RDGs, and the additional support you might expect from Create Age if you get funded for one of these RDGs. I've got one slide. There's an example of what a series of sessions for an RDG might look like, but it's just an outline to give you an idea. There's many ways that research development groups could run. And then I want to provide an opportunity for everyone in the room and online to share their ideas potentially for RDG. So if you've come here with a burning idea you're expecting to submit, just to mention those in the room, so we've got that opportunity potentially to combine people in the same topic area or others that are interested in being involved as co-creative researchers have that chance to join together. And then we'll go into the Q&A. So that's just you firing away, asking any questions of any of us from Create Age, things that aren't clear, and we can also readjust our guidance and guidelines based on what we talk about today. I mentioned that Rodolfo's recording, so this will go online on our website for anyone else who couldn't attend today, so they get a chance to hear some of the Q&As, and we'll probably summarise these as well in written format. So again, people who are interested in applying have got a chance to hear what has been said today in the room. So the purpose of our research development groups is really part of our mission, and that's to stimulate co-created ageing research. And one of the ways in which we think we can achieve that is by funding research development groups to support that transdisciplinary group of people who want to co-create a research proposal. We have a series of priorities that I'll come to in a minute, and these priorities have been identified by our communities. So we've held various events and we've asked older people in different communities what are the areas that they would like us to see prioritised for our programme of research. So we're hoping, and we would like, the research development groups that are applying to this call to address either one of these topic areas or one or more of these topic areas. And you can be either developing a research project that addresses a single research area or a programme of research work. The one key aspect of the research development groups is obviously if we're trying to stimulate research, the output needs to be a research proposal at the end of the funding period. So I'll come to more about that later. So just to reiterate what we mean by co-creation, And that is the top level of this diagram. There are different levels of ways in which we can involve, engage, or have people participating in our research. And in our research development groups, we are keen that older people and other stakeholders take an active role in developing the research ideas for a proposal. This is the unique opportunity that we offer through Create Age. So many proposals that go on to be co-created ageing research involve people in the fieldwork, but being able to have this run-up period where we actually design the research process in a co-created way is an area that is lacking, you know, in terms of having funding and the resources to be able to do that, because you know, we need to be able to value people's contribution by providing, you know, opportunities for vouchers for being involved, be able to fund transport, be able to organise meeting venues that are convenient for our co-creators. And often this can't happen without some funding source. So that's what Create Age is wanting to do, is help people be able to get to the point at which they've developed a proposal that has been co-created with older people and other stakeholders. So at this point, we are really interested in involvement, and that's when people are actively involved in these research activities, so research development. I'm going to just move this thing over here so you can actually see what we're talking about. That's it. So these are the priorities for our research development group that have been identified in the events we've held out in the communities. So we've got work, income and retirement, ageism, healthcare access, community transport, maintaining independence in social activities, housing, and this is a variety of things that relate to housing, so the alternative models of housing for older people, but also issues that are to do with overcrowding or substandard housing. We also had a series of topics that we have collectively sort of categorized as Indigenous community connections. So we had some concerns about the use of Te Reo or Pacific languages, but how communities connect to the wider community, how they connect to whānau and whenua. So we have, as part of Create Age, an aged care consortium, and the importance of aged care facilities have been also raised by our community. Connecting with education and creativity in later life, especially about creating meaning and purpose, have been a theme that's come from some of our discussions. Access to amenities and facilities, or the availability of amenities and facilities. And safety concerns. Again, this is quite a broad area that includes both the safety of older people at Kaumātua and Tamariki, but also safety in environments and being able to access communities without feeling scared or fearful of one's safety. Intergenerational relationships have come up. Now, this again is another broad area that encompasses both the type, the contact and quality of contact, but not just positive. There can be positive elements that might be support, and that's either way, you know, different intergenerational transfers, but they may also be strain in some of those intergenerational relationships. Resilience has come up, food and exercise, preventing memory loss, and maintaining gardens. Maybe some of the housing and gardens may come together, or gardens may be treated as an entirely separate topic. So those are key priority areas that communities have identified. This is a list of the things that we would like to see in a research development group, and our application forms ask you to list the members of the RDG and also to say what their role is in the RDG. So we would like to have at least 2 experienced researchers at the University of Auckland. Primarily, that's because, of course, the university are funding our centre and we're meant to be generating more research income for the university. So in order to cement that, there needs to be at least 2 researchers at the University of Auckland included on one of these research development groups. There needs to be a chair, and that chair will have the responsibility of convening the RDG, for reporting back to Create Age project manager, and if you haven't met her yet, this is Tamika over here. So the chair would be in contact with Tamika, but also to maintain communications with us. So for example, if you want to increase the involvement of older people in your RDG, we can use our database of co-creators who signed up to be a part of the centre and send out information to them to say, look, we have this RDG going, do you want to take part? Do you want to get involved in developing research in this particular area? We've also asked people on that database if there are particular areas of interest to them around our main themes of health and wellbeing, around place, and around the other.
Work retirement and
Thank you. So work retirement. So we have an indication of the broad areas that people might be interested in and whether or not they want to take an active, involved role in developing proposals. The research development groups have to be transdisciplinary. So that means they need to span more than one academic discipline. They need to involve older people, and we also suggest very strongly that they involve collaborators from other sectors. So that might be the public, private sector, or civic society. So you might think about involving people from the local council if that's relevant to your particular topic, involving different NGO local perhaps community groups or charities, especially those that may be interested in the topic or maybe utilize the research output from your final project should it be funded in the long term. Because having these people involved right at the outset will help you craft the proposal. So thinking about how we go from developing research, implementing that research, gathering the data, and then what we find, putting those results into practice. If we have the people that are responsible or able to implement and apply that research into practice right there at the outset, the chances of that transforming society are going to be much greater. We are hopefully not asking too much of our research development groups. There's $10,000 up to $10,000 available for the groups. The expected outputs, as I've mentioned already, would be at least one co-created research proposal. And in the application form, we ask you to indicate which funders you think will fund this application. So that is going to involve a little bit of investigation, looking to see where your topic aligns with funding interests. We don't particularly want to go and see just HRC. We want to see that you've thought about under actually which of the elements of us, for example, Health Research Council of New Zealand will fund what you're proposing. So some thought about where this may situate itself and what sort of funding it may attract. We're also asking anyone who holds an RDG to present what they've done at one of our Create Age Forum. These are our public seminars that are about every quarter. And so we hope we'll have a series of these explaining what the research development groups are doing and the proposals that they've developed. And then finally, we're asking for progress reports to Create Age. Again, these are simple. It's not a huge final report. We want to know whether you met the objectives that you set out in your proposal, where you're submitting or have submitted your research proposal to. The only proviso about this is when we funded a research development group, we expect to be kept updated about that proposal in the long term. So for example, if the first time you submit a proposal, it's not successful, but then you try a different funder, we would like to be kept informed of where that proposal goes and the outcome of each time it's been used in a funding process. This is because we will need to demonstrate to our funders, the university, what we've done with our money and where it's gone and what's happening to the outputs from those research development groups. Also, we will include information about the RDGs on the website. So we ask for a summary on the application, and that will just be there for our other co-creators to see what's happening within the centre. What can you expect from us? Well, we would like to provide you with some additional support over and above the up to 10K that you can ask for a research development group. We will provide an introductory session on the principles of co-creation. Now, we still have these in draft form, but we do have some ground rules about involving older people that are about the ways that we act with each other in a co-creation situation. They're really around respect and hospitality, and we would expect every RDG that we fund to be able to adhere to these principles of co-creation. You can also request additional support that includes a training session on the cycle of research. This is important for co-creators in our research development group. If you're from academia, you are probably very familiar with the cycle of research and what research means, but you must remember that we are working with people that do not necessarily understand why we are trying to craft a proposal in a particular way, or what that cycle of research looks like. And so we will, at the outset of most of these sessions, we would expect some sort of way to make sure we have well-informed co-creators who feel that they're being supported and understand the process that they are engaging in. We will be able to offer some research assistant support with organising and supporting meetings, or potentially with reviewing literature. And then at the point at which you come to develop your proposal, if you need it, there will be some additional support from some of the senior academics in the centre. All of those support will be negotiated with Tamika, and will be depending on what resources, how many groups we have funded, and the distribution of our resources across those groups, and the interests and expertise of our research assistants within those groups as well. So this, I said I'd give you an example. This is a recent RDG that was actually funded through the Transdisciplinary Ideation Fund at the University of Auckland. And what I did there, I've just put down what we covered over 8 sessions. That was quite a few sessions. We had that first session, which is about an introduction to research. And this particular project was about developing dementia-friendly domestic soundscapes. So we covered a range of topics that were important to consider in the particular field of soundscapes and dementia. So the importance of sound in our lives, then something about methods. How could we capture sounds at home? And feedback from our co-creators on how successful that was, what methods they preferred, what they thought could change, what would be useful in incorporating into a proposal. Acoustics and hearing with your ears and brain, different ways in which we could capture that sort of data in a project that was tried and tested out, and thoughts of our co-creators on what would be a good method. Then around desirable and undesirable sounds at home, and we ended with what could be included in a research study. So those cover, for that particular project, the various areas that we need to establish. Obviously, other projects will have different interests and different topics, but thinking about how they may pan out over a series of meetings, so your co-creators have a chance to add their experience, their life skills, their thoughts about what that final proposal should look like, how it should be conducted, and what methods should be adopted. So that's all I've got to say for now, before I open up in a minute to Q&As, but question and answers session. But first of all, would like to just ask people in the room, if you have an idea, and I don't mean drilling down to the minutiae of the research question at the moment, but a broad idea that you think you might be pitching towards a Create Age RDG, if you'd be willing to share that with us now, just so we've got that opportunity for potentially combining ideas or people to get involved in an area they're really interested in. Susan?
I have an interest in ceasing driving and how we can support older people in that journey into ceasing driving.
So for those people online, this is Susan Wardworth from School of Nursing, and she's interested in driving and the cessation of driving for older people. Thank you, Susan. Anyone else? Thank you.
Hi, my name's Leah, and I'm interested in health and wellbeing services being delivered in a home and community context, and how those outcomes for people who are in receipt of those services are being measured, and whether or not they meet the standards outlined in the national standards for home and community healthcare services.
So for those online, Leah's interested in health and wellbeing outcomes, both in community settings and home
and community.
Home and community settings, especially whether or not outcomes meet the standards set in guidelines.
Yes, and actually, you know, a lot of the research areas of interest are covered, but you know, within this space by support workers. So support workers facilitate a large part of the areas that have been raised already. And so, yeah, the relationship between working standards for support workers and outcomes for vulnerable adults is just very interesting.
So just to, sorry, I'm going to just repeat so people can like it. There's a lack of current research around the working standards for some of the home care frontline workers and how that then may impact on outcomes for older people.
Got it.
Very good. I'm interested to.
Okay, so we've got a connection potentially here, Leah and
Awesome.
Monica at the end.
Awesome.
I'd love to talk to you.
Oh, great, awesome.
There we go, we can see RTG's.
I'd
forming in
also
front
like
of
to
our
talk to
eyes.
you, Leah.
And I can
Sorry.
tell you at the end, as a recipient of all the services available to us, I can tell you from personal experience and from my colleagues how far you've got and how much further you have to go.
So we
My
have
name's Mary Burns.
Marie Burns is talking about from the recipient end.
And I arrange
Okay.
help for them, and I in turn hear of the results and the benefits that they actually got out of it. And I am one on the other side as well.
Right, so she can
I dare say that I
From
have a lot
both
of experience with that in my
from both
20 years.
recipient and provider. from
Yes.
both ends.
I can
And Monica.
like to introduce myself. I'm Monica Austin. I did a thesis in aging 50 years ago. Yeah. So anyway, besides that, I've also received help from for the recipient of the ACC. So we know this is our needs and are met. Some of the needs are not met. They do very well service, but you need to be checking on them so that the services and the care quality.
So, and Monica is a recipient of ACC and also has experience of being a recipient of care and what needs to change with those care.
And interestingly, depending on whether or not you're a recipient of ACC funding services or ADHB funded services, outcomes are very different.
ACC as well.
Yeah. Since that, if you had an accident, you had your leg, that's a short term.
Sorry, I was just looking for, there doesn't appear to be a microphone, so I can't.
This room usually is quite.
Okay, maybe I'll get,
Yeah.
can people online hear? Do you get a response? If, when I don't repeat?
Probably good if you do repeat.
Yeah, probably is. Okay, anyone else with some ideas?
I'm Terry Moore. I'm with a nonprofit charity. Auckland East Community Network. And I've actually got two topics. The first is whether or not an update to the Auckland Age-Friendly Action Plan, which was published 3 years ago, could be prepared by seniors, for seniors. The list of 107 actions published by the Auckland Council were all developed by council departments and by the nonprofit groups they connected with. And they're measuring progress against those 107 actions. I would like to explore the idea of the additional benefit potential of having a new plan that's co-developed by seniors from all across Auckland.
That's very exciting. It's really interesting.
And you had a second idea, didn't you?
Oh, you want to hear it now?
May as well. I'm just coming up because we've got some online contributions that I'm just going to share or give you to Eunice, either or.
As part of a project I did last year and repeating again this year, the Volunteer Expo is targeted about getting higher participation in the community and voluntary sector by offering a whole bunch of range of groups that take volunteers. We tried when we did it in 2022 to get information from the Department of Statistics on the General Social Survey, which they gather information on every year. And it has important questions about social isolation and loneliness. There's an expert here, Vivek Murthy from the United States, Surgeon General there, who's an expert on social isolation. And there's another Harvard University professor who talks about the General Social Survey and the importance of that in measuring trends.
Is that Putnam?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'd like to pursue that leadership and find out, can we eliminate the barriers with the Department of Statistics and have community groups, nonprofits that want to do projects, be able to benchmark where we are now in a particular local area. This is the Ōrākei local board area. What is the degree of loneliness we have now?
Yeah.
And then as we execute these projects and boost volunteerism and so on, how do we measure the improvements over the years as we try to decrease loneliness?
Thank you, Terry. Two exciting ideas there. Do you want to mention the ones online, Jane?
Yes, and it's good. It's taking on systems, isn't it? Because that information is already available. It's just the system decides who gets to access
So
it.
get a
and use it.
participant as public policy advocates.
Okay, thank you to everyone in the room, and everyone online is going, I want to connect. So what we will do, I've asked people online to give their permission that we can share contact details after. So for all the attendees, we'll make sure we get a list out if everyone's okay with it, with your name, maybe your topic of interest, and contact details. So we have Otila in Dunedin, and they are just interested in sort of listening in and understanding what's going on at the moment and understanding where they fit in. Ruth, interested in care homes too, particularly recording residents' life stories, and has already worked up a proposal idea. So if people are interested in that, or Ruth, you might have heard from others in the room that you might be wanting to connect with in that regard too. And we've got at least an historian here as well. So Leah, Natasha Lewis from the Aged Care Commissioner's Office would like to connect about the research on home and community support services and health outcomes.
Great, awesome.
And Ottila's come back in saying the research area they're interested in is gambling and seniors, looking at the precursors for problem gambling and gambling motivations amongst seniors.
Can I just say,
Yes.
can I say, Attila, I might contact you because we have an RDG funded from last year, which is specifically focusing on financial capability in Pacifica groups, but there is a topic area that will be covering around gambling as well. So that'll be great to connect.
Thank you. That would be one.
Someone keen to research about the importance of food and exercise in the life of older people. Natasha from Aged Care Commissioner, interested in anyone looking at hearing aid subsidies and dementia in Aotearoa versus other communities. I know a researcher that would be interested versus other countries where, for example, the UK, where hearing aids are mostly funded. And they found an unpublished grey literature thesis. That might be the thesis of the person I'm thinking of. But yes, I can connect you with you, Natasha. And Melissa, one of our Create Age team members from Latin American community, she knows there's an interest in applying for work regarding work experiences of migrating and meaningful involvement of migrants with their local community, with co-creative methods that allow them to come together, often to minimize loneliness and isolation through different activities.
And I think that connects certainly with something Monica was saying yesterday, so we could connect
Yes.
maybe different community groups.
Yeah.
together. It's good.
And the WHO, so from Natasha and HK Commissioner, the WHO also launched a global commission on social connection recently in November 2023, which I think the US Surgeon General is on. Interesting, relearning this and social connection. So, and then we've got Ellen Moffat, primary area of interest, primary healthcare and supporting aging in the community. Not sure whether we fit in here, but tagging along as ProCare has access to a wide network of general practices across Auckland Metro and also extensive data. Time is limited, so we would not be looking at leading. Yeah, I might get in contact with you, Ellen. Oh, got lots coming through, so social connections amongst older people in apartment typologies.
Can you do some work around that, Janine? Yeah, also.
So we've got Janine Wiles in the room from University of Auckland who's done some work in that. And someone here that's happy to share details, and they're representing the Northern Region Aging Well team, primarily regarding age residential care and home care services. And then we've got Rebecca Sharp, one of our theme leads within the centre, who's a psychologist and researcher working with older people with dementia. And her area of interest is around giving people voice in their care, advanced training for support staff to enhance mana and respectful interventions for behaviour that challenges. And she's keen to connect too, so might be some connection there with you as well, Leah. Sorry, there's so many coming through, I can't even keep up with you.
That's amazing.
And then Daniela, who's an occupational therapist from Colombia and wants to work in co-creation with Latin American colleagues in Auckland. And they want to create a laboratory of methodologies such as photo elicitation, biographical narrative, social cartography, and multisensory approaches. Oh, this is all reading blind from not even reading. Okay, we want to work with Norma and Manu Amiga, a foundation for older people in Auckland. Sorry, I must have missed that before. And then, yes, Attila said, very interested in connecting about gambling.
Excellent. So can I make a suggestion? Nush, do you know everyone in the room and have their email contacts? Because I'm just thinking if anyone who's suggested an idea that wants to connect, we've got all the people online, obviously, but if you want to maybe, Nush, could you take a sort of register afterwards of people who want to be listed as, with their topic areas and a contact? That would be really great.
And I can see people online wanting to connect with each other as well. So maybe record their names as well specifically. So you've definitely got, you know, it in your mind now who you want to connect up with.
Yeah. So anyone who hasn't had a chance to speak who would like, Janine?
I have a couple of ideas that I've talked to you about before. One is around, there's been lots and lots of research done around your social network and the diversity of that and how that's important for your well-being. And I think it would be really interesting to explore that in terms of contextually, cultural context. So what role does cultural context have in that? That's not so well understood. So what does that mean in a Te Ao Māori context or in a Pacifica context, in a rural context, for example?
So just in case you can hear Janine, she was talking about network diversity, but in different contexts. So for example, what does that mean in the context of rural communities or Māori and using Te Reo as well? So there's work, that area has particularly been neglected when we think about diversity and social support networks.
And the second area, thinking about, I've been starting to think and talk with you about promising practices around supporting caregivers, particularly people working with someone living with dementia in rural and remote communities, around ways that people
Good.
with complex.
Yeah,
needs
still
can,
in the meeting, but they can
to
live
be able
over
to stay
there.
in their community.
So the other thing Janine's just raised is how do we support caregivers, particularly caregivers of people living with dementia in rural areas and who may have complex needs but live remotely from different service centres. And that's building on some work we did during COVID, a project that identified specific concerns for rural caregivers of people living. John?
I'm John Parsons. I'm in the School of Nursing here at the University of Auckland. Really keen to talk to you. An idea that I'm pulling together with Tafata Waller is around allied health into home care and into face within primary care. And so I'd be really keen to talk about that. The other idea that I've got permission to talk about, so Kathy Perry, who's a colleague of mine, she's just having a text saying it's okay to talk about this. So she has identified that there's a number of big flats and apartments going up in Avondale, carrying older apartments with older people sitting at the back of the apartments and young families at the front. And it just, the plans look like something out of London. It's just big cell blocks. So these old people are going to be close to that. Yeah, they could come from anywhere around New Zealand. So it seems like an amazing opportunity to actually work with them, what their needs may be, and then maybe look at some interventions. So she's really keen to.
So John was, the last project John was talking about is a new housing development in Avondale, which looks like a high rise with older people located at the back and in the front, potentially not taking into account either of the or any of the residents' needs. So there's potential there for research in co-developed research with the residents in those new facilities. Any other idea? Yes, hi.
Kia ora koutou, I'm Claire. I currently do research or have done research for a while on people's experiences of marginalisation within healthcare, looking at children and young teenagers experiencing cancer care. Currently working at Te Kukinga Hauora Māori, looking at experiences of racism and discrimination faced by Māori medical students and doctors within the healthcare service professions. But what I'm interested in for this project or to develop as a project is looking at rainbow communities and their experiences of aging, safe environments, experiences of discrimination, and what resources are available in for them. Yeah. Their experiences, but also experiences of their carers, whether that is partners or family or friends, but however that looks.
I think probably the online people and then you can Yeah, fantastic. So that's a huge amount of ideas. There are going to be more ideas in Bridgeview Fund. So
I was just going to say, for those at the university, there is the Research Development Fund currently being advertised, which so submissions to that close on the 28th of February. And I just think that's another opportunity. I think you know, the things that Ness has talked about this morning give a really good framework for how you might approach an application to that fund. So a really good way to think through your development of that application. And those research development funds are for a similar kind of purpose. And I guess like if you've got some collaborations or some benefit out of coming today and you still apply it in that different pathway, it'd be great if you let us know. And yeah, because I think as Ness said, there's many more projects than what our small little research budget can fund, but we are seeing more and more funds available for this kind of work. And so for us, we think our responsibility is to connect you up with those funding options as well. So and support that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a good point as well that we are still working through the ways in which we can support research projects that are developed outside of our RDGs and thinking about the resources we've got that we may be able to support in the same way we've talked about here, but that's a matter for our next SMG, I think.
So how do you decide
Yeah, so the applications that come in will be taken to our strategic management group, which is a large group across all of the faculties in the university, and it also includes older people and people representing organisations. So they will check them against the different criteria that are on our guidelines, and they will be prioritised based on ranked in that group and decided there. So are there any other questions about the process or the way in which we will decide on who gets funded and who doesn't get funded?
How many projects are you funding? Right now?
So can I just answer Terry first and I'll come to you, Monica, next?
You mentioned things like a seminar, present and progress reports. That's all prior to being selected by the strategic?
No.
After selection, by the.
Yeah, after you've actually delivered.
Way.
Yeah, so we would like,
In your 10,000,
yeah,
you're doing those things, okay. I did a master's thesis, and of course, the big deliverable is the thesis document. Is there any publication requirement? Do you have to publish any results? So who learns and benefits from?
part of our
research.
principles of co-creation are about making sure we learn from what we do. So that sharing of what difference has it made involving older people will be through our co-creation forum. But we're not putting an onus on people to publish. If they wish to publish, that will be decision amongst that group on what you might create for a publication. But the sharing of the learning will be in that public seminar. The report, again, is a minimal requirement, because what we want to do is people put their energy and efforts into co-creating the research proposal that hopefully gets funded.
Okay, so all of us here with different topics are interested in those topics because we like to see movement forward, progress forward in those specific areas. Now, we'll create a lot of information around those topics with our project, but the project itself won't necessarily advance the civil society in those directions. We won't get better driving support. We won't get better, in-home care support directly out of executing our research project. So I know that there's another part of the university, Uni Services.
I disagree with that, because part of the plans for most of the funders will ask you how you actually use those research roles to make transformations.
So like in my project, proposing that we have a new age-friendly plan developed by seniors, for seniors, that won't get done during the research project. That'll just be exploring that possibility, but then to actually execute that, to say, let's do that now. Let's do something new with in-home care. Let's do something new with
So
driving.
think of it as steps. What we're funding is developing the idea for a research project. The proposal for that research project goes to a funder, and if it's funded, that's the implementation of whatever it is you've decided to do, what methods you're going to use in your research
So the
project.
proposal can be, say, let's implement new support for driving and cessation of driving. That's the proposal, and then you actually carry that out.
No, the
Support-
research would be
support.
underpinning how you go about doing that. So for example, if you're talking about co-creating a new action plan, what methods are you going to use to co-create? And your proposal will be, this is the steps we want to take in order to co-create something, and this is how we're going to evaluate whether or not it's effective. So that would be then sent to a funder for funding and implementation and evaluation.
So it might be that in this $10,000 grant, you're talking to communities, how do you want to share, how do you want to contribute to a new policy? What difference do you think it would make if we did contribute to that policy? How would we know if our voice of contribution had been heard and implemented? And then you would then develop that into, so that then becomes in your grant proposal for a much
So the
larger
grant
grant.
would actually support the project to create the new plan.
So
If
the
we got-
$10,000 grant would support.
No, beyond the
Beyond
10,000.
that, yeah, and that's what,
The proposal development.
yes, that's
And
correct.
then you apply for a larger grant to
correct.
actually carry out that project.
Yes.
And that could be the implementation, like
Exactly.
building the.
Well,
whole
yeah,
Yeah, but remember, the project is research, not service delivery.
That's my question.
Yeah, that's what it's
What's
about.
the
research.
distinction
So if it
between
had an
research and
evaluation
service?
component in it, it is research. If it's just about implementation, it's service delivery. And unless you have some research outcomes from that planned project, they are different things. And
So
we're
we
looking
need
for
help on
research
understanding that.
development. Yeah.
And so that can be kind of, so, and when you look at implementation, there's all, I guess, a realm called implementation science. So what methods are you applying to think through how we implement this and how we measure? And I'm looking, John's looking at me because he's better at this kind of thing than me, but how we measure whether we've implemented it in the way we thought we would implement it. Has it changed at all in that process? When we did implement it, did it actually achieve the outcomes we thought it might? Or are there some other outcomes we didn't realise that are beneficial that we've achieved? Have there been negative outcomes from it? We might be looking at the resource required to implement as well when we are looking at the research evaluation around implementation. So there are ways that, and the reason, and we're not just saying research for research purposes in that case, right? The reason that we think there's value in wrapping robust sort of practices around implementation is that you learn from that implementation. Because I think we see lots of ideas for things, lots of things implemented, but then we don't really understand why or why not those things did or did not work.
Yeah, and who contributed to those actions? Because I think in the case of Auckland Council, one of the questions maybe in your research development will be, how do we make sure we're not excluding people from being part of this? And what sort of are there differences perhaps in the level of trust in working with organisations such as Auckland Council, and how do we overcome that if we are to truly represent and co-create an action plan for the council?
And implementation will allow us to be able to say, okay, we made it work perfectly in the Iraqi. What about another area? So being able to consider all of that and the context allows us to translate it and be aware of what made it successful, what issues.
And I think that Terry, you've like actually created a really good scenario of why there's value in us all coming together, because we all have different experiences, expertise, and perceptions that we can bring to these projects, and that's why there is value in people coming together and working together on these. So thank you for that.
And Monica, I believe you wanted to ask a question.
Thank you. I want to know, how do you select the topic you want to fund? There's so many.
Yeah, so we have a strategic management board in Create Age, which includes academics from across the faculties in the University of Auckland and in other universities. So we've got AUT membership on that too. We've got representatives from organisations that work with older people, and we've got lay members in that group. So that group is where the proposals will be taken to, and they will be judging against the criteria that are on our guidance, and they will rank priorities. Any other questions about the process and the form and the things?
I have a question. You mentioned that some of that money can be used for vouchers and transport kind of things like that. I was wondering around, is that the only way you can pay for involvement?
So that's an interesting question. We are in the middle of a piece of work that's asking older people themselves how they want to be valued for their involvement in our activities. And until that piece of work has been finished, at the moment, we are using gift vouchers to demonstrate the value that we're placing on people's involvement in working groups. That does not contravene the university guidance that has just come out. So it's, but in due course, especially once we finish one of the RDGs we're running at the moment down to Chloe, we think we will have a better understanding about how we value that involvement, what that might entail. And it is likely to be about choice for those participants. So some people might want actual payment on a casual basis, other people might want to give a grocery voucher. We certainly would expect travel to be covered through the RDG, so reimbursed through petrol vouchers or arranging transport, so we've used blue taxi vouchers as well.
We did a project, an HRC project a few years ago, which covers a lot of things that are being discussed here today was the Inclusive Streets project. And so we were focused on transport, the transport system, by which we meant public transport, cars, but also footpaths and, you know, getting to work, but getting to where you want to go. And we were very interested in thinking about minoritized communities in Auckland and their experiences. So beyond kind of the privileged groups who often get included in transport discussions. And there was a lot of really interesting work that came out of it. But one of the ways we did that was to employ people from within those communities as our research fellows and our RAs actually. So you can employ people and recognise their expertise that way, but always in Akitanga.
So that's a really good point, Janine, as part of the research development groups, when you're thinking through your methodology for the project, it will be about who actually is going to undertake that piece of research. Is it going to be done by peer research? And if so, what?
Sorry.
No, secondly, Susan, thanks.
I have another.
Yeah.
Another question. Do you have a sort of timeline in terms of the RDGs, how long they can?
Okay, all of the money has to be spent by December this year. There is no extensions. And if you have components of your project, if you were to test out a methodology, so on the whole, our co-creation doesn't usually need ethics approval because you're working in the same way you would work with other researchers developing a proposal. If, however, you are testing out things with your co-creators, so that might involve them testing out a methodology, you will need to get ethics approval. So that needs to be considered in that timeline as well. We all know how long that can sometimes take. But other than that, have we got a timeline for the applications?
I think it's 22nd or 23rd of March.
So you got 10 months to complete the project.
Yeah. Well, it's research development, so it's the proposal development. Obviously, as long as you hold your sessions and conducted all your work, your proposal, actual development and submission might be beyond that because of the ways in which the funding rounds work. So that's not an issue. It's actually spending the money that you budgeted in the planned way over. Has to be within the.
So 22nd, 23rd of March, the applications close off and the strategic management group begins evaluating.
Yeah.
And then when do they announce their decision?
It will be after the meeting. Do we have a date for the March meeting yet?
So just one meeting and they decide.
We will have a look and we will add that to our information on our website. So we can see when the next SMG after that deadline is and when we will let people know. So that's a good point. If I want to know.
What is your website?
Create Age.
Mel would like, has got a hand up to speak.
With double C.
Double C.
Melissa's got her hand up.
And at the end, AU, anything?
Could you, that's no thing,
yeah.
sorry. While Rodolfo's looking for the website exact address, Melissa?
Hello, Kiara. It's just a question of how many
She's
grants.
speaking, She's not on mute, but we can't hear. Sorry, Melissa. I'm not sure what.
No, I don't know.
I put it in the chat.
Are you able to type it in instead?
Yes, it's in the chat.
Yeah, the volume is.
Oh, yeah. We stop share.
Yeah, there we go. You're on mute, Melissa.
Yes, I was. Can you hear me now?
So we still can't hear you.
Is it our speakers will be selected to the?
Try it without have you got your headphones plugged in?
And now, can
Try it
you?
without that, see if you can do it through your unit, your.
Try adjusting your volume.
Hello.
your
hello.
headphones. We can see it here.
It's, have you got the right speaker?
Oh, I think people online can hear her. We are the only one who cannot.
Can you try again, Melissa?
It's our.
Hola, hola.
Yes.
Hello. It might be online, but I just thought it could be good for general knowledge. How many grants are available for this call for applications?
That depends on how much people are requesting.
Okay,
Are we up to 3?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
thank you.
But if there are people only asking for 5,000, that will be up to, it could be 6 potentially.
part of the requirement is to have an academic involved or two.
Mm-hmm.
How do we find them if we're not part of the university
Talk
already?
to us. That was the first thing on the first slide, was talk to Tamika. She can be the matchmaker. Because we have this strategic management group with representatives right across the university, they are our method as well to cascade information within their faculties. And so we have a range of people with expertise in all sorts of topics that we can use that to get to the right people who might be interested in working together. So the communication with us as a centre to try and identify people to work with is really crucial, if they're not here already in the room.
So excuse me, you can be able to link our interest to somebody's that our same idea.
If you've got a topic area that you want to put forward, yeah, by all means, talk to Tamika and Rodolfo, and they will try and find the right people in the university to take that forward. Any other questions online, or are we all right? And any more questions in the room while you have us here?
I'm like a completely separate, but sort of related.
Yeah, sure you go.
I've just been yesterday, or this week, talking with some Canadian researchers who are doing a big international project, a co-creative project on to co-create stories about promising practices and policies for inclusive and equitable aging. And so they're doing a 10-city project and looking at Auckland as one, and they're really interested in connecting with people who might be able to work with them on stories. So they'll be coming back later this year with a team of international researchers. So kind of this is the other end of the process, but it's possibly a really good resource to get involved. There'll be a whole team of them coming in. They plan to work in a co-creative way to develop these stories about inclusive and equitable.
Sounds like it's
I'm
right.
interested.
So if you're interested, let me know and I can connect you up by email to them.
I think
They're here at the moment to talk to people. Janine sent me.
Joe's meeting.
I've already connected, Joe.
Fantastic. That sounds like an excellent opportunity to work internationally with people who are co-creating. And I think some of the, when we're thinking about where our research development groups may take a proposal, thinking of those international collaborations are also important. And again, amongst the team of people within the university, there are all sorts of international collaborations and networks that we can help join together in a matchmaking kind of way.
People have a lot of stories to tell, and I actually recorded Nancy Walden as a social worker about 15 years ago. I gave it to the oral historian in Auckland Library, and they're going to make it into a digital copy.
Wow.
So I thought that is good because she had so many stories. She is a very well-known blind pianist, and she teaches children, more than 300 children without pay. And she's a fantastic person. So I want her story told.
Yeah,
So
excellent
I got
resource for
it done
people
in
to
a
potentially look at the-
Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot of stories that old people like to share. Yeah, so that's it. Thank you.
The Hope Foundation for Aging Research, I've come across. They raise money. You know about this, you guys?
Two of us are on the board.
And they provide scholarships. And these are PhD students primarily, and their topics are on aging.
Oh, beautiful.
So would it be possible, as part of our RDG application, that we suggest that we bring in a PhD student on our project who is funded perhaps by the Hope Foundation or some grant like this? And so that becomes a resource for this project and they get a thesis out of it.
So the difficulty would be with that is that the Hope Foundation decide each year who gets the scholarship. So that's a process in itself. So people say, for example, who are applying to the University of Auckland have the opportunity to also apply for a scholarship with the Hope Foundation. They have to submit their application to the Hope Foundation, and that's decided internally by the Hope Foundation. There may be, of course, opportunities to involve some of the students that already have Hope Foundation scholarships, include all of the information about what they're doing is included on the website.
That would just be a coincidental overlap between the topic they've already got and
Yes.
the topic we're proposing. So I'm just wondering if there's a way to merge our research topic ideas with.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's what you do as part of that research development. And I think, I mean, a lot of us sit on grant, assessment panels and things, and they will be looking for inclusion of emerging, up and coming junior researchers on those proposals, because they want to see that, that you're building research capability, capacity at various stages. So it's within communities, it's within those formal academic pathways, it's developing leadership opportunities as well within research projects. So it's a really good way you're thinking of how can we bring all these different people together to do these proposals. So you might find someone that's already got a Hope Foundation scholarship. They don't fund the entire PhD. I'm a recipient of one. So you'll usually be having other sources as well. So it's that kind of thinking. Who else should we bring into this team?
So maybe if we get the proposal, our proposal is to get funding, part of which goes to a student who's going to.
And we do potentially have another opportunity actually through the centre. So we have PhD opportunities for scholarships, for Create Age scholarships. And we've said that these would be also potentially aligned to the priorities that are identified in our communities. But I think if there are ideas where there are potentially partners ready to go that are keen to have a PhD on board, we can add that to our information for our PhD scholars. There are these willing partners in Auckland who are looking at researching in this area. So if you want to apply for a PhD scholarship that addresses this, then please. Does that sound reasonable? I mean, it's not far from what we're doing already. At least we've already got the list of priorities there, so it would be a small step to say, and there are potential collaborators.
I guess the other thing to that is that when your match made up with some academics, and those academics will also advertise that they have this topic, because it takes about a year from a PhD student, potential PhD student getting interested to actually being enrolled. And then it takes 9 months or more to actually start collecting the data. So identifying a project early on in the RDG, advertising it, finding the right student, so that when the big research proposal goes in and we're testing how to actually implement your organising so research, then the PhD student with the timeline is more likely to match up. So I wouldn't leave it until you've got the research proposal funding. You've got to start
Before the end of March.
At the University of Auckland.
No. That would be for the bigger research project, yeah.
University of Auckland fund PhD scholarship.
Okay, well, we are at the end of the session time. I'd like to thank everyone for your really active engagement in this group. And it's been great to see these ideas bubbling to the surface and the potential for the research development groups that Create Age will be able to support. So please let's keep the conversations going. We'll try and do a little bit of matchmaking. But if there are any questions outside of this session that you suddenly think of, please use our email address to contact us and ask, and we will address those. And I'd like to hand over to Jo for closing the academy.
Okay, thanks everyone. It's been awesome to hear all these different discussions and see all the connections being made in the room, online and between the two. So thanks everyone for your time today, and we look forward to hearing more from you and seeing more of you in all the different activities of Create Age. Me inoi tātou, kia tātou katoa, kia te whai o tō tātou a ia i kai te aroha o te atua me te whiti ngā taitanga ki te wairua tapu, ake, āmene.
And thank you.
John, can I just check, are you free 3:30?